Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're manufacturing or selling anything in Vietnam right now, you already know the demand for sustainable goods is absolutely skyrocketing. But hey, as the market grows, so does the scrutiny. So today, we're unpacking the definitive guide to proving your product's sustainability in Vietnam's rapidly evolving market. Let's get right into it.
So, how do you prove your product is truly green? Honestly, it's a defining question for modern manufacturing. With greenwashing popping up literally everywhere, we really need to ask ourselves how a business can genuinely build trust with Vietnamese consumers, corporate partners, and public procurers. You can't just slap a little green leaf on your packaging anymore and call it a day. You need undeniable, government-backed proof.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the Vietnam Green Label itself. Second, who qualifies. Third, the business case. Fourth, the certification process. And finally, common hurdles.
All right, Part 1, the Vietnam Green Label. So, what exactly is it? Well, the Vietnam Green Label is the national gold standard for eco-certification. It's officially issued by the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment, who actually just took over this portfolio recently from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. Now, the whole foundation of this label rests on the 2020 Law on Environmental Protection and Circular 41. And it's completely voluntary. That means it falls outside of your mandatory product labeling laws, but trust me, it is an incredibly powerful multi-criteria tool.
And here is where we see a really brilliant difference. Basically, anyone can claim to be green through self-declaration, right? We see it all the time. But the Vietnam Green Label, that's a Type 1 eco-label, operating in the spirit of the rigorous ISO 14024 standard. This means it requires an independent assessment of your product's entire life cycle. We're talking everything from raw material extraction through manufacturing and distribution all the way to its final use and disposal. It's the whole shebang.
Moving right along to Section 2, who qualifies for certification?
The crucial point here is understanding two foundational hurdles. Before you even look at the specific criteria for your particular product category, every single applicant must prove two main things. First up, your organization has to strictly comply with all environmental and labor laws, no exceptions. And second, like we just touched on, your product's full life cycle must demonstrably cause less environmental harm than comparable, conventional items on the market. It has to actually be better.
Now, while lots of product groups have their own published criteria, we're seeing a massive surge in some specific areas. Driven by Vietnam's tightening policies on plastic waste and this huge push toward a circular economy, eco-packaging and biodegradable products are, by far, the most prominent sectors pursuing this label right now. Retailers and consumers are actively demanding these green alternatives, and the market is responding.
In fact, we're already seeing major domestic players stepping up to the plate. Brands like Stavion, Alta, Aneco, and Vafico have successfully navigated this exact process to secure their certification. Seeing these industry leaders do it proves that, yeah, the standards are super rigorous, but achieving this national eco-label is entirely possible. And honestly, it's becoming increasingly necessary if you want to stay competitive.
Let's dive into Section 3, the business case.
So, why go through all this trouble? Well, beyond just aligning with Vietnam's broader circular economy agenda, the tangible commercial benefits are immense. Having a government-backed label drastically increases consumer trust. It's that simple. But perhaps the biggest financial draw here is public procurement. Government policies heavily favor environmentally friendly products when it comes to public tenders. Plus, having an independent, state-issued label acts as an absolute shield against any of those greenwashing accusations we talked about earlier.
Which brings us to Section 4, the certification process.
The procedure itself is highly structured across 6 chronological stages. You start by identifying and mapping your product against the ministry's specific criteria to see exactly where your gaps are. Then, you compile your environmental dossier and get your products tested. Once you submit that complete dossier, the competent authority assesses it. If you pass, they issue the certification, which, by the way, you then have to carefully maintain.
To successfully get through that submission phase, your team really needs to prepare a comprehensive and flawless dossier. This isn't just filling out a simple application form, folks. You need your trademark registration, a highly detailed product assessment report proving you meet the criteria, and crucially, either an environmental protection activity report or a valid ISO 14001 certificate.
Let's look at Section 5, overcoming common hurdles.
6 months.
I really want you to remember that time frame, and your R&D and quality assurance teams need to remember it too. Your product test results must be no older than 6 months from the exact date the ministry receives your valid dossier. If you get caught up in bureaucratic delays and your test results age out past that 6-month mark, you'll literally have to pay to have your products tested all over again. No one wants that.
And that actually brings us to the absolute most common question we hear from manufacturers when they look at these dossier requirements. Do you actually need an ISO 14001 Environmental Management System certification to get the Vietnam Green Label?
Well, what's really interesting here is the distinction between what is strictly mandatory and what's practically necessary. You can submit a basic environmental protection report. That's perfectly acceptable. Baseline compliance. However, having an active ISO 14001 certification drastically smooths out the entire process. It instantly proves to the assessors that you already have systemic environmental compliance in place. It makes your dossier lighter, it's faster to review, and it just shows a much higher level of institutional maturity.
Because if you don't have that systemic maturity, you are going to run into some incredibly common pitfalls. A lot of companies end up choosing the incorrect testing metrics for their specific product group, or they submit incomplete environmental reports. And since the enterprise pays for the product testing themselves, mistakes here cost real time and real money. Honestly, seeking independent consulting and training for your teams on lifecycle assessments and criteria matching is often the smartest investment you can make to just bypass these exact technical traps.
As Vietnam rapidly accelerates its transition toward a green, circular economy, consumer patience for vague, hand-wavy sustainability claims is just disappearing. The Vietnam Green Label offers a clear, structured, and government-backed way to elevate your brand way above the noise. So, I'll leave you to consider this. If your product is truly green, are your current sustainability claims ready for the ultimate independent test? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, good luck on your certification journey.